Hey guys, Ru here, and in this video I'm just gonna voice over what I'm doing. It's a composite. We're gonna create a composite out of some renders. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm just simply dropping a picture, JPEG, into the Blender. You just drag and drop as a plane, and then I position it behind my Mac. So what I'm trying to do here is to align the camera height and focal length with with the image, so it matches more or less. It's quite important to match the angle, camera focal length and the height from the ground to match the horizon, vanishing points and all that, so the image makes sense visually. It doesn't throw any errors for the brain. So this is probably the most important stage of your composite. If you're trying to create a image made of different kind of photos, you really need to match them perfectly in terms of perspective, colors, brightness. But the camera stuff is just essential. If you get that wrong at the start, image is gonna look fake. So now what I'm trying to do is I loaded HDRI. I'm trying to find a similar lighting, so you can see on the main image that the sun is really low, because you can see it by the shadows on the grass. They're quite long, which means the sun is low, the angle is sharp, steep, and also it's light from the right side, clearly visible, right? So it's strong sunlight, probably somewhere from underneath the clouds, maybe slightly scattered through the clouds. So I'm just gonna dim this light and make a bit down. So I'm using an add-on called Photographer, which I highly recommend. It allows you to fine-tune all kinds of stuff on in terms of exposure, f-stop, and all kinds of stuff, autofocus. But I use it here to just manually set exposure of my lighting, of my HDRI, to more or less match the scene. I'm gonna be rendering in cycles. So I'm trying to set it up first for in Eevee because it's faster, but then I'm gonna switch to cycles and play with the values. You can see I have two Macs, right? So one of them is basically a Mac created in Blender. What I did was I'm not sure if I'm gonna be doing it in this video or not, but what I usually do is I render the base, the base Mac that or whatever I'm rendering with all the mattes, colors, etc. Then I make another one with a cutout background for two reasons. One's for selections. Well, in this case, both of them have no background, so it doesn't matter. But the main reason is that the other one I would just render in a color of dust. So I can use like a scratch brush or like a chalk brush to simply apply, dirt on it very quickly, so I don't have to do it in texturing software. It's just really easy in Photoshop. So I'm going to combine them both. Now what I'm doing here is I'm using curves to match the color and brightness of highlights, blacks and midtones. That's really important. And the way you do it is you simply add curves to Photoshop and then double click on each of these pipettes, the eyedroppers, and select the darkest point, the brightest point, and midpoint from the background, and then you apply it to your other pictures so they match. Then of course you need to do some fine-tuning, but that's actually right now what I'm doing is that it's what I told you about. I'm matching all the materials to one color of dust, and I'm gonna switch off everything now, and I'm gonna select all the decals, go to D menu with decal machine and match, and find the same material, which is called material, and then I'm going to reapply them so they also, if there are subset decals, both materials are actually matching the base Mac, right? It's going to take a while because it's like a few hundred decals. But when I turn it on, you see, everything is just one color. And that's exactly what I want because, dust goes over everything, right? When I'm positioning Mac on the canvas, I need to find a good spot for it that will make sense visually, also composition wise, right? I wanted to have some space on the right side because I got other stuff I'm gonna be adding. This plugin I'm using is called Pixel Squid, okay? Pixel Squid, it's like Turbo Squid, the same company, but Pixel Squid offers slightly lower resolution and less complex models. You can get it for like $15 a month. But if you're into composites and doing the kind of stuff, this stuff is amazing because it allows you to bring 3D models into Photoshop and actually change the angle of them. So you can see I can perfectly match the perspective and everything I want. And this is probably the best way of doing it. So you don't have to do this, create them yourself. You can very quickly build scenes and populate them with people or just some cargo, whatever. Now here what I need to do is the same trick as with the Mac. I need to match this guy to the environment. The light is coming from the right hand side, so it needs to be brighter. Left hand side needs to be darker. It needs to, everything needs to make sense. I'm gonna add like a, hovercraft. I think it's from Star Wars. And just put it behind him, and of course we're gonna have to match it as well. The matching of colors and brightness usually takes a bit of time, requires a bit of practice and fiddling, but it's really essential because otherwise things just look out of place, and you need to blend them together. At the moment this Mac, if you look at it, just doesn't look like it fits. Color wise it fits, but it's still, it's not grounded down, no shadows, nothing's there, so we need to work on this one, right? So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna go to Pixel Squid website and I'm gonna simply add some planets. So how it works is you go to website, you need to log in, and once you subscribe, you're gonna have an access, and you just click on whatever you want to add, and then simply choose from the drop down menu a Photoshop Lightbox. It was gonna get added automatically to your plugin in here. So that's extremely convenient, and of course you can rotate it, add or remove shadows, change quality, etc. Right? So amazing stuff. Pixel Squid is really insane. And now I'm adding the magnet. I mean, the ideal way to do this would be to add all three of them or two of them at the same time, but it's not really difficult to match this. So not a big problem. I didn't even have to use automated, alignment tools because it's just so easy to match them together, align them. If the pictures are identical, Photoshop's gonna snap them anyway, so. Now I need to align this planet so, the bright side to the right hand side, dark side to the left hand side needs to make sense. Trying to use some blend modes to blend them together. Always use blend modes, they're very powerful and they allow for, sometimes, they're just gonna give you unexpectedly good results. So just always play with blend modes. It's eventually you're just gonna get the feel which one is the best. Usually gonna go for a soft light like this one, but then I think I changed my mind, and you gotta blend this together with the background image. But you see the problem here is that now the sky is popping out from the background and sort of piercing through the planet, which makes this planet transparent. So I'm gonna be fixing it later on because I didn't like it. So this would work, but it's a bit too, too invisible for me. I just need this planet to pop a bit. So yeah, it's a bit too strong, but we're gonna be changing this at the end of the video. I usually do like a wrap-up session, like create his final composite and then just walk away for like half an hour and come back and see if I've missed something. If something looks odd, I just usually fix it. Now, important things for compositing is to have a lot of brushes. There's tons of free brushes on on the internet. You can get for like anything, you know. So in this case, what I'm using is like a, I think it's called scratch and damage or something like this, like damage brushes or like cloud brushes or like dust brushes. You have stuff like chalk brushes are pretty good because they kind of, you know, like razor sharp and they give like irregular edges. This is what you want for applying dirt. So what I'm doing now is simply painting over the mask of a black mask, which conceals this Mac, the bright render, the uniform color, and I'm simply applying dust to the base Mac. You see, so it's really easy to do this. It looks pretty cool, and it of course matches in terms of colors and everything. Because by the way, I took the before I rendered that Mac, the uniform colored one. What I did was I took a color sample from the ground and I made it less saturated, so it's a bit more neutral. And you know, I put it, I changed the hex code in Blender on the material, on the BSDF material, and applied it to everything, to every single part, the same mud. So that's how I did that. So you don't have to worry about matching colors because they do match, you know, from the get-go. It's again matching colors and, you know, adding some blues in shadows and some cyans and reds and whatnot. Just, you know, playing with tones and colors. You have so many tools in Photoshop. Just, you know, have fun. You got a color balance, hue and saturation, you know. Then you have curves, levels, you know, all this stuff. And then you get like filters, like, not filters, I mean, tools like gradient maps and color lookups and whatnot. Solid colors. It's just so many ways of matching stuff. This guy's a bit difficult to match because it's, I couldn't find really a good spot for high tones. So kind of tricky, but eventually I think I've matched them with the ground. I mean, you need to remember that the ground will reflect light, and the reason why this whole image is so warm and red is because sand is reflecting the sun at a specific angle. It makes everything just appear so saturated, right? Probably also this picture has been edited. It's a JPEG from a free website called, I think, Unsplash, if I remember correctly. But you can find these things in those like few websites that you can get free stock images to really good resolution, because these days cameras are just crazy, you know. Even a watch can take pictures like 10 megabytes or something. So see here, and I'm trying to match this guy to the background and, you know, paint the back with a little bit lighter light. So I simply use curves for it and brighten it up, change layer, play with the layer mode here. So in this area on the right hand side, you can see that it's switched to luminosity, which means that when you set the blend mode to luminosity, it will affect only tones, not colors, so not saturation. If you switch to color, it's going to affect colors, etc. So blend modes are very powerful in Photoshop, and that's how it should work. Now I'm simply painting over with the sand color, and I'm switching to color just so it, you know, imitates the reflection of light back on him. Now this shadow is a little bit skewed. I think you should go at a slightly different angle, you could argue. But I'm just gonna be fixing it later on, so don't worry about it. In fact, this bike has like lights on the sides later on, so we could argue that, you know, the bike and the sun cast two shadows, because I'm gonna be adding a second shadow later on, so it's gonna be alright. This was tricky to do as well, these shadows here, because when you paint on such a saturated ground, the saturation is gonna spike even if you do it in luminosity mode, luminosity blend mode. So the way around it is that you really need to do it gradually, you know, like in layers. The more layers you have, the better. Don't try to apply effects in Photoshop in like one go, because it will always look bad. You need to use as many layers as possible. Sometimes when I create lights or shadows, I have like 10 layers, you know, or more. You simply, you know, because you got contact shadows, which are really, really deep, then you get like immediate shadows just close to the structure, and then like a fall of shadow, and this fall of shadow gets blurrier and blurrier. So you could really, like go crazy and spend hours doing shadows, but in this case it wasn't that necessary. So you need to remember that the shadow is gonna be really almost pitch black underneath. You need to always look at the shadows in the image, right? So you can see that the shadows are not super deep on these mountains, but when you look at the grass, the shadows are like almost pitch black, right? So it's all dependent on the angle and also what kind of environment reflects the light back on to that area. So in case of this mech, I don't want to go too deep on feet because we're gonna have dust, and dust reflects light, okay? Because sand is basically reflective, yeah. So it will reflect light back on the mech. So you don't want to go too deep because you're just gonna make it won't make sense visually if you go too black on the shadows. So you need to balance it really. So the best way to do it, in my opinion, is to go back and forth and, just work on different, just like you work in Blender. You work on one area and then you move back to another area and just, skip around, jump around, and eventually you're gonna get it. Because if you focus on one area in particular, you might just mess it up. You lose the whole picture, Now, this bike is also quite tricky to match because there's not many places to click on. So I'm using the same method, simply copying these curves and simply using those three color pickers to pick. The top one is for black tones, middle one is for mid tones, and bottom one is for white tones. Don't know why it's reversed, but that's how it works. So you need to, again, first grab colors from the environment and then transfer them onto whatever you're matching. And you see it just starts coming together slowly. It's still standing out a bit. The lighting is off a bit too, so everything needs to be fixed. But you see, I at some point I'm going to leave it alone and just move to another area because, like I said, if you focus on one thing, 100%, you're just going to lose the whole picture. We need some shadows underneath, logical. And you remember that shadows are actually falling from behind the bike. So this engine underneath is gonna be almost black, at least should be, but the bike is not standing on the ground. It's not, it's hovering, which means the sand will reflect some stuff back onto it, so it cannot be pitch black, right, like this grass. Because if this grass was actually hovering in the air, you will be much more lighter underneath, right? So you gotta think about details like that. As you know, I'm adding just highlights because we do have highlights from the sun, right? So that's important. The sun is very tricky because it's not a hard sun. It's kind of like mellowish, and I think the illusion of these deep shadows is caused by post-processing of this image. So whoever post-processed it went really high with contrast on this in saturation. So it's not super crazy, but it would help if you, for example, dropped some saturation from the main image. It usually helps to match the colors better. I didn't do it, but you could try. So you drop saturation from the main image, like by 2 or 3 points, and the same thing from the image you're trying to match, and it's a bit easier to match them. You see, I'm trying to add some light on sides where the light would, fall logically. You could also use stuff like blend if, but in this case we need to paint lights where they're not existent, so we need to do it manually. Blend if is when you double click on the layer and you have like sliders, and you can actually determine what kind of tones the top image gonna, affect. Same here, the shadow is a bit off, but again, like I said, there's gonna be a light over there, so everything's gonna make sense at the end. Because lights, they annihilate shadows, so it would be pointless to make a shadow in a place where the light's gonna fall in the future. So I'm gonna be in like a halogen lights manually to the scene. which is really easy to do in Photoshop. And I'm using literally black color, I think, to just paint like dirt and oil spills. Yeah, I'm using an extremely low opacity, I think it's like 2 or something. And I'm using a pressure pen. I would not recommend this doing it with a mouse. Now see I'm painting contact shadows. They are really important. This is what brings the object down to the ground. The contact shadows are like tiny lines of blackness, pitch blackness, where you got you know, whatever stands on the ground meeting the ground. It's like an AO shadow basically, right? We call them contact shadows. So they're really essential. And then, you know, shadows becoming gradually less and less violent and pronounced. I think I'm gonna be hitting dust now, I'm not sure. Yep, so basically grab some cloud brushes, drop opacity, and make sure that you either change settings in a brush to make it random, or use different cloud brushes with like every few strokes, because otherwise it's just gonna look, you know, like a pattern. And there's no such thing as dust in a pattern, right? So it just wouldn't make any sense. Also remember that, you know, dust is being lit by the sun, so it's gonna have different colors and levels of brightness, so you need to grab samples from different areas. I'm actually using the background area as a sample here. So like a fine dust is gonna be lighter in color, right? Because it's translucent. And it's higher above the ground, it's gonna get lit by the sun, so it makes sense. Adding dust also helps to bring these images together. So now this mech, you know, starts more and more looking like it's actually belonging in that scene and standing on the ground. Adding some shadow dust also here as well, because this guy's walking, so you know that's important. I think I overdone it, so I'm gonna remove this. It's just too much. It's not a it's not a, you know, a flunch of goats or something. It's just a one guy. So yeah, but this mech would raise a lot of dust walking, right? So it's gonna be more dust around him. If you were, you know, meticulous, you could just add we could just add like footprints or something. But we could argue that this ground is, you know, really thick or something and doesn't get damaged. But yeah, we should like, you know, probably add some footprints or something. Or like a, you know, like a ruined earth, or like a trail where he was walking. But again, time limitations. It'll probably take a lot of time to do this. So now I think I'm gonna be adding lights. Yeah, so the way you do this, you simply create a new layer, select like a bright color, and change layer blend mode to linear dodge. And you create, see, I'm creating a lot of layers. Then one of them is gonna be soft light, and you're done. Then you have to play with opacity and or fill, and you got your halogen lights. And I'm gonna be adding some stuff to them as well. And the same way you can boost any type of lighting in a scene, or just add a new one. So I'm gonna boost the eyes, make them a bit bigger, because they're kind of small. So there you go. See, this linear dodge is just gonna make it pop like crazy. So you see now, you can see this red dot is visible, which is exactly what we wanted, because we want to indicate that this robot has eyes, and we can, you know, look into them. So when you create a composite, you need to create visual points of interest. And if you, for example, don't have them, you need to make them. So I'm gonna create these lights between the bike and the mech to lock the eyes in a constant battle between, you know, this guy walking and this mech standing. The planet is also a pretty huge element, so it's like a triangle, which is great. So I always need to think about composition, how you can improve it, or how you can, you know, change it or add something to it, or remove if something is out of place. Okay, that's important. So what I'm using is I'm using a clone stamp tool to on a separate layer, and I'm actually adding some ground on top of the feet, so they kind of like sort of bury it in the ground, so you know it doesn't float above it because it's a lot of mass standing on the ground. So for sure this feet would just sunk in a bit. So that's also an important detail. Yeah, I'm not very well organized with my scene, guys. I just, you know, I work artistically, so I just keep adding stuff, and I don't really pay much attention to naming, but sometimes, occasionally, I do name folders and put shit in folders, especially when it's just getting a bit crowded, because it's easier to find things. Some of my composites are like, you know, crazy amount of layers. I got one that's is almost 1,000 layers, so if I didn't have folders there, I probably would die looking for stuff. So I'm still trying to match this guy, add some light. This guy's really difficult to match. It starts looking pretty okay, but it's, you know, it's not easy to match this guy. If I really wanted to match him perfectly, I would need to repaint the shadows a bit because it's a bit too bright on the left hand side. So I need to make some selections and, you know, go really precisely, go precision mode on him. But just, you know, he's so tiny, it's barely visible. I need this guy over there for the scale reference. That's, you know, that's the best way to it's the best way to draw a scale of your model. Just add a human or something that is easily recognizable by the brain. That's, you know, scale wise. Yeah. Add some glow here too. So, you know, same story. Linear dodge, second layer with a bit of soft light, and just, you know, make it a bit less crazy, and you're gonna get a bit of a pop in lights. So a bit more accent on the lights now. You see they kind of stand out. I'm in camera raw. What I'm gonna be probably doing now is I'm gonna grab a brush and add some clarity. So if you do that, you see I'm dropping saturations and adding vibrance. That's kind of important because saturation is gonna saturate everything, but vibrance gonna add saturations to areas which lack saturation. So what I usually do is I drop saturation and add vibrance. Now I used infinite color to harmonize it, so it created the dulled the colors down a bit, but blended everything a bit better. So I use plugins because it's just, you know, easy and fun, especially if you know what you're doing or what kind of effect you're after. I'm using Nik software, which is great plugin. It's massive. Like you can see, this is just one of the filters, which is like tens of sub filters. I'm using brilliance and warmth, and also pro contrast, which are very good plugin, very good filters from Nik to add a bit of punch to this image. Okay, see, just I got my vibrance back. So also when you add clarity, you need to think like where to add clarity to. The reason why I use brush for clarity is because I didn't want it to mount this in the back, it gets sharpened, because they're not supposed to be sharp, they're really far. Now I'm playing with lookup table, and I'm trying to find something that's gonna fit. you know, just looking for different solutions, colors. You know, sometimes happy accidents, you know, are the best way to go. So I'm just playing a lot with things when I'm compositing. I know what I'm going for, but sometimes, you know, you just get lucky or unexpectedly you find some interesting way of colorizing or toning the image. So now I'm adding a light here. Like I said, I'm gonna be adding lights to this bike, and they're gonna cast a light on the ground, which I'm gonna be adding at the end of the video. So it's the same as for the Mac, you know, linear dodge and soft light and whatnot, and it's just the same way. I think I'm looking for the bike here. I'm not sure what I'm trying to do. Probably what I want to do is add light to the because the light's gonna spill on the front. So what I'm gonna do is add some light to, yeah, there you go. See, if control click the bike, and then go back to this layer and just paint on these elements in the front, because light's gonna spill there, right? So, and just reduce opacity a bit or fill. See, it makes sense now. Now I'm gonna add some more shadows. So what I did was, or highlights, yeah. So what I did was I did curves and lifted the curve and then up, and then to make it brighter, everything. Then added mask, black mask with, I painted over the pipes and, you know, some kind of like a standing out bits on this engine, so the sun from the right side is gonna, you know, catch them. Now I'm playing with curves and doing some post processing, kind of, and I mean cross processing. So what you can do is change from RGB from the drop down menu to a specific color like red, green, or blue, and you can add and remove curves. So now what I did here was mask them from the top with gradient, and see, I made the bottom a bit more warm and the top a bit more blue. So the lights from the sky and from the lights from the Mac gonna be dropping on the top. So now I'm using Null software. The problem with the Null software is that it's from Red Giant, company who produces plugins for After Effects, and it's not available anymore. But you can get flares from as you know, just JPEGs, and you can add them in the same manner. So all you need to do is just simply find a flare that's on the black background and simply add it to Photoshop and change blend mode to screen. This is what I'm doing here. You see, I'm adding them to a black canvas and then simply changing to screen, which will remove all the blackness. I will just leave the lights on its own separate layer, so I can control them better. Yeah, because I don't want to be too bright, because the reason is that I'll be increasing contrast at the end and the light's gonna pop, so I don't want them to be too strong. So you need to think ahead a bit, you know, when you compositing or editing. Back to Nik software. I think I reversed some changes before and just going back here and redoing stuff. I cut out some stuff from this video because it was just you know, I was going back and forth, and it wasn't really important. So it's possible that I'm just redoing some stuff because I decided that it wasn't good enough. So you can see it's, you know, it's a lot of work. I mean, picture like this, image like this is probably about 2 hours or something like that. Especially if you want to play a lot with shadows and stuff. And the more elements you have in a photo, the more time you need to spend on it, because you need to match all these together. So I'm getting closer to finishing it, but I'm adding some vignettes and stuff, which is also very important, by the way. You need to close your image, yeah. So you need to make room for the edges to get darker at the end, you know, so you can sort of surrounded with like a framing, so the attention goes into the middle. But in this case, it's a bit tricky because the sun is from the right side, so the right side should be brighter than the left side. So everything is important. All these details are exceptionally, important. Even the signature, right? Need to find a good place and a correct opacity for it. So I'm adding, my name and Blender Bros. So you need to find a good place for it and make it non-intrusive, visible but not non-intrusive if you want to add a watermark to your images, right? I'm back to null software because I want to add another flare to this bike. There you go, see? So now I'm gonna have like a sort of corresponding light on the other side. I didn't make this screen a bit smaller, but it's, the same procedures. I'm just removing some junk from this flare that I don't need, like poly strips and whatnot. And now I'm going to apply a mask and remove some light spill from this flare to make it a bit, to make it blend a bit better with the image. And there you go. Probably drop it down a bit. I think I dropped it down too much and I made it a bit brighter at the end. Well, we could argue that this is like a, light at the angle, or maybe, kind of like a stoplight, just bike is hovering and it's not really a powerful light, just to indicate its position or something. By the way, I made this light a bit stronger later, but I'm gonna be adding fog over there as well, like a fog that light goes through. And also I'm gonna be, after I finish this, because I finished the image and then I just came back to it, like I said, and I revised a few things, and like for example the shadows, right? I'm redoing the shadows now on the feet of the mech. I'm actually deepening them down in crevices to make it a bit more grounded, because I thought the shadows over there were a bit too light. Well, you could argue that there's a dust which reflects light, and also the mech feet reflect light, right? So it's not gonna be super black, because the feet actually are like, mirroring the sun back onto itself. Although the left hand side of the mech could be a bit more dark, so I'm just fixing that. And I'm adding another shadow in here to to make it proper, which I'm gonna probably fix in a minute because it's off because of the light. I'm adding another shadow for the guy. So now the guy is like two shadows, one from the bike, one from the sun. And I'm gonna be adding light spill on the ground from the bike. Also using a linear dodge, I think. So I'm just simply painting, with white, and you need opacity to go low. And then I'm gonna probably remove this bit of a shadow that's sticking into the light because it makes zero sense. Then I need to find this guy and select him, and then I can Control Shift I to reverse the selection and delete everything outside, and then reverse it back again and just paint over him because I think it's still too bright, you see, on the front. So I fixed that too. Also, the last thing I'm gonna fix is the planet. I forgot about it. Yes, because the planet is way too strong. Because if you think about the atmospheric, you know, the clouds and everything, and the angle at which we're looking, this bottom of the planet will probably either invisible or barely visible. So I'm literally using cloud brushes to fix it, but that's, I think, the last thing I'm gonna do. Well, that's it, guys. That's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed the course. Hope you enjoyed this composite. Hope you learned something useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.